Welcome back, fam. We back at it again. Today we're going to continue with our Skylark build. We're going to do our LS swap series. If you watched the last episode, we put the engine in, fabricated the mounts, so that's sitting where it needs to be. Everything is square up front, passenger and driver's side mounts. Now we need to start working on the transmission. So what I'm going to do is rehook up the transmission. Once that's hooked up to the engine, we're going to go ahead and measure out the tail shaft of the transmission, make sure that's square. Once that's square, we're going to start building our cross member and installing our mount. We're going to actually try to reuse this stock cross member. So we're going to try to reuse this thing. I'll see how far I can get with it. I have some bump ups for dual exhaust, so it may work, but we'll see. We'll see where everything lands. For now, I'm going to get under here and try to get the transmission and the engine together and get all the bolts in it so I can see where this tail shaft over here lands. That way we can start fabricating everything up. So let me get to that now, set you guys aside and get under here and start working on this. Oh man, I hope it fits, but I don't know. I don't think so. Seems to already be hidden. Oh man, I do not want to have to cut the transmission tunnel. That's just more work. Alright, let's let down the engine a little. Change this angle. And then try to get it to go forward. That still sits too low though. That's gotta go way up. Alright, let me see it from the top. Yeah, we're way off. What's going on? We about to hit here too? Oh man, I don't think this thing's gonna fit very well. I think we're in all kinds of trouble, to be honest. I'm just looking at it real quick. And I don't think we could get this transmission up high enough without cutting into the transmission tunnel. All right, so let me put the camera down real quick. Let me see what's going on under here. See if it's even possible without cutting things out of the floor. All right, so let me bring you guys in here and show you what I'm dealing with. All right, so we are hitting, if you can see right there on the transmission tunnel, almost at the firewall. So, I don't know, hopefully you guys can see that. Let's see here. Alright, see how it's hitting there? I'm not even all the way up, but it's already running into the firewall. Well, the transmission tunnel where it meets the firewall. And then back here also, I'm probably going to have to take some out just for the driveline size. Once this goes up, I think it's going to be a clearance issue here in the back near where the drive line mounts up to this yoke. So I think there's gonna be a clearance issue here too, but we'll get to that down the road. For now, I got a lease cut up here by closer to the firewall. Let's go to the other side. Also about to run into it here with this servo housing. So yeah, it's gonna definitely run into it here on the bottom of the floor. So that's gonna have to cut out too. Sucks, but this video went south real fast. I'm gonna have to do some cutting. Oh man, I can't believe it. I'm gonna have to do some cutting because I'm not willing to move the engine farther forward. There's a couple reasons why. One is I'm running out of space here on this cross member to even move my engine mounts forward. So I'm pretty much at the end of it. As you can see on both sides. I mean, I guess I could cut it down and I might get an inch there. There's also the radiator here and a fan that's gonna go here. So I don't want to take up the space here if not necessary. The main reason I don't want to move the engine further forward is because this drag link here comes really close to the oil pan already. So the clearance is very little here when this thing is at full turn. Let me actually turn it for you guys so y'all can see. Alright, so we're at full turn. And then you can see how close it actually comes to the pan already. Right here and here. Hopefully you guys can see that. There's like no gap at all. I'm afraid if I come further forward with the engine, we're going to run into some problems here. So those are the reasons I don't want to come forward with the engine. Also, the further back you have it, better weight distribution it is for the chassis. So I mean, I just all in all rather not move it forward. I like where it sits now. It's at a good distance from the firewall. Yeah, I like where the engine sits now. So for sure, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go ahead and cut the transmission tunnel. So let me jump to that, figure out what I got to do there, because now that's a whole nother scope of work. So let's look into it and see what we have to do to get this transmission tunnel cut, because that's what's got to happen. So here's one last look at it before we start cutting this thing up. It's the inside of the Skylark. I don't think I've ever sat in this thing with y'all. So let me just sit in here real quick before I pull this seat out. This is the first time I even sat in the car with you guys. I barely sat in this car, even off camera. But this is it. This is the Skylark. We're about to pull these seats out and the center console out. The driver's seat too. So that way we can look at this firewall we're gonna have to cut up to get this transmission to fit. Because right now it's just way too narrow. So yeah, I'm gonna have to take all this stuff out. We're gonna definitely want to reuse this center console though, I think, because this is sick. It says Pontiac though. It must have come out of another car. I don't know what that'd be, like a GTO or a Tempest, or I don't know, but it says Pontiac. Anyways, if you guys know, make a comment below. Curious why that says Pontiac. It's probably coming from a donor vehicle, I'm assuming, but I like it. It's period correct. I believe the Grand Sport had this as an option, although this is not a Grand Sport, but the Buick Grand Sport Skylark has this option. So I want to definitely keep this, clean it up. Yeah, this will be sick for now. But let me get this stuff out of here. One last look again around the Skylark. I like this wood wheel. I'll probably keep that for a minute, polish it all up. But I don't know, we're gonna have to do something about gauges, because those things are old. And then we'll probably do something here digitally, but I don't want to commit to anything right now until I really get in here and start playing. But let me finish this engine and transmission build. So next step is to cut out some of this firewall and also this transmission tunnel. Let me get these seats out and the center console. So let's take one last look at the Buick from the driver's seat. Here's the back. It's not bad. Sagging headliner. Enough talking. Let's go ahead and start with taking these seats out and the center console. So let me put this camera on a tripod and we'll get to that now. Alright, let me show you guys what's going on. The seats are out. Actually, I'm gonna sit in the back now. I haven't sit back here yet either. But the seats are out. Front driver seats out. Passenger seats out. Center console's out. As you can see from the time lapse, it didn't take long at all. And this shifter looks janky AF, so we are going to get rid of that. So take a look at that before we get rid of it. Oh, this thing is horrible. They got wood here that this thing is bolted to. Holy cow. My goodness, y'all. Look at that. I ain't never seen that before. Someone stacked some wood, straight up wood. Like a cedar or something. It's not even a hardwood, it's softwood. And that's what they're bolting their shifter up to. Yeah, so all this stuff is garbage. Shifter's gone. We're gonna run our own shifter anyways. We'll get a new one. So yeah, now we can see our transmission tunnel we gotta cut out. Hopefully I don't have to go too far up. I don't want to get into that pad for the firewall. So I'm gonna have to do some measuring and marking. So let me get to doing that. I'm gonna get this shifter out though real quick first. All right. Do we have enough juice? Yes, sir. Maybe a hammer. I'll show you what I do when I mark it out. For now, I'm going to clean up the inside of this with a vacuum so I can work. Alright, so now we got everything cleaned up and vacuumed in here. We're going to go underneath and take some measurements so we can get an idea where we got to cut. So let me bring you guys back under here. Alright, let's get under here and take a look. So I know I could see this damage here where there's like someone cut some of the floor out here, or they just punched through it. Looks like they didn't even cut it for some kind of shifter in the past. Looks like they did it here also, and there's a patch plate inside that also looks equally as bad as it does under here. So that was a hack job that we need to repair anyways. So let's just go ahead and cut it all out and figure it out. Once we get everything mocked up engine and transmission wise, we'll build it back in. I'm gonna go off this tear here in the floorboard where they punched through for a shifter, and then I'm gonna use that as a reference point to see how far I should cut back. So for now, until I have the drive line, I'm not going to even cut into this structural piece here. I'm going to try to not touch it because I don't want to have to rebuild it. So I'll probably just take it back to here. So let me measure this spot, mark it inside because I want to cut all this mess out. So I'm going to definitely cut that out, and then we'll start working our way forward to figure out what pieces we need to cut out. So let me go ahead and get to that now. So that cut forward to, let's say, this bolt on the tail shaft is about 10 inches. So we're going to measure 10 inches back from this reference point inside. So from about here back is 10 inches. Alright, so let's measure it back. So you can see here, this is the tear, or where they punched through for that shifter. But there's a bolt right there. We want to go 10 inches back from that bolt as we measured it from underneath. And we're going to mark our floor here. Alright, so let's see, that bolt's right about there. I'm going to mark 10 inches right about here. Right about there. Alright, so there's our cut line on the back. Alright, I'm going to cut back to you guys after I get this marked out. Alright family, so the plot thickens, I need to, so I've been marking it out as you can see, but I need to cut up pretty high into this firewall. So unfortunately I'm gonna have to take all this heater assembly out. Another thing I was not anticipating, but it's gonna have to get out of the way so I can work. Sucks, I have to go that high up on the firewall with my cut. So I'm not sure how people are fitting these 4L80Es in, 4L60Es. It's just not a lot of room in this Skylark, but I don't know. I'm gonna cut up this floor and try to make room for it. So let me cut to that. I'm gonna have to get this rest of this stuff out from under the dash. I just can't work with all this stuff in the way. So let me go ahead and get this stuff out. So let me jump to it now. All right, fam. So I really didn't record me taking out this heater box assembly, but we got it out now. Being very cautious here with all this insulation for the firewall, because I mean, probably just wool, but it could be asbestos. So I'm not going to mess with it too much. I'm just going to move this out of the way for now. But I'll probably put on a respirator to get the rest of that out. I'm just going to do it off camera. It's just too hard to do this kind of work and record at the same time. I just wanted to show you guys where I'm at so far though. And so the heater box went all the way across this firewall, but I need to make a cut in here, so all that had to come out so I could access this area to make a cut in this transmission tunnel in order to get this big transmission to fit in here. So again, I'm going to go ahead and take all this insulation out. I want to replace it anyways, but I'm going to put a respirator on. I'll do that off camera. But I'm going to replace all that with new material, so that way we could just get that stuff out of there and get some new modern material in there that we know is asbestos free. So this janky old stuff has got to go. I'll have everything marked out and I'll show you my marks. You can see some of them here. I've already started, but I'm going to mark out the rest of the cuts and I'll cut back to you guys once I have it all marked out. Alright fam, so as you can see, everything's all cleaned out. It's all vacuumed and removed. I also took out the heater and everything under dash as far as the insulation for the firewall. So let me show you what we're dealing with, making cuts for. So we're going to relief cut out some of the firewall, probably about 2 inches up on that whole turn, and then some pretty good chunks here at the bottom too for the transmission. So let's take a look inside real quick and I'll show you guys what we're going to do in here. I'm going to mark it up. I have a pretty good idea looking outside there, between the engine and transmission. I have a good idea of where I need to make my marks, using some of these existing holes as reference points and such. So I'm gonna go ahead and mark that out now, and that way I could get to cutting it open. Alright, so let me show you what I did. I went ahead and marked up the firewall there. You probably saw it from the time lapse, but that's pretty much all I'm taking out right there. And then over here, I'm taking a little notch out here. There's a servo on this side of transmission that's gonna run into the tunnel there. I'm gonna try to retain the rest of this tunnel to hold the shape, so that way it's close to stock as possible. And then I'm gonna take this mangled piece here out because we need a little clearance here anyways, and they've done a lot of damage here to the floor pan, mounting different shifters throughout the years. So we'll just get rid of that whole section and redo it. You can see there's a patch panel there made out of some galvanized steel from the hardware store. It looks like some roof tar that they would seal like a roof on a house with. So we'll get that out of there. So let me go ahead and I'll put you guys back on time lapse, because that's the only way I could get things done in an appropriate amount of time. But I do want to make a mention that after you mark out all your panels, you're going to want to make sure to lower down your transmission and get it out of the way, because you don't want to hit the transmission housing with your cutting blade on your grinder, because you could cut right through the bottom of the floor and then right through the housing on your transmission, especially if it's in the tight clearances that you've been cutting. The transmission is probably laying right against the floor anyways. So before you actually make your cuts, take your mocked up transmission and move it down and out of the way. And you may want to do the same thing with the engine, depending on how much room you have between it and the firewall. So that's what we're going to do. I'm going to lower the transmission out of the way. The engine I'm going to leave in place. I'm just going to go really shallow with the blade. When I make the cuts by the engine, we should be fine. But I'm going to put you guys on time lapse so I could get these cuts made. Alright fam, from the time lapse you can see we cut this out here in the firewall in the bell housing area here for the transmission to fit against the back of the block. So you can see that there. We should have some more room, but you can see how close we are there with the back of that head. So it's not a lot of room in the Skylark, not as much as at least my F-Body Camaro. That had tons of room. You can see here, this is where they had the shifter mounted and they did a lot of damage to that panel anyway, so we just went ahead and demoed that all out. But it's also going to give us some room here for this tail shaft, and in here where the U-joint's going to connect to the drive line. So I want to get that as high as possible. I'm trying to get the pan off the ground. It was hanging a little too low for me when I looked at it. So hopefully this gives us enough room to come up, and then we could actually mate up with our engine. So let me go ahead and start moving this transmission up. I'll leave you guys up here so you can take a look from the top, but I'm going to go underneath and line the transmission up with the back of the block and get some bolts in. And then the next thing we're going to do is start looking at the transmission mount here at the back. Alright family, so we got it up into position, we got the bolts in. We do have a little bit of a clearance problem still right here, so I may have to take this out anyways. Again, I don't want to take the whole thing out if I don't have to, but I got a little clearance issue here. So I'll probably take that out, but I'm not going to do it right now. First I'm going to do is cut the spot welds on one of the engine mounts. I kind of want to get it shifted a little bit more to the passenger side and the tail shaft here. So the tail shaft needs to go this way just a hair, about 1/4 inch. So I'm going to cut the spot weld and pivot the whole thing this direction. All right, fam. So as you can see, we're doing some fabricating today. Worked on the engine clearance here at the firewall and the transmission tunnel. And we also shifted this mount now. We cut off our spot welds, moved the engine about 1/4 inch, about 1/4 inch that way, backwards. That caused the tail shaft to move over towards the passenger side a little more because the tail shaft was not aligned the way I wanted it. So a little adjustment here on this motor mount. So that's that. Everything's sitting just like I want it. I'm happy with the way it sits. Let's take a quick look at it. All right, as you can see, we needed to clear out a lot of this area here just to get this bell housing to fit. We're gonna have to take a little more out here. As you can see, it's still hitting. So we're gonna take that down a little more, but we have real good clearance here. We have good clearance here. And then back here on these bolts. And we have great clearance back here as well. So now that we are center lined here with the car, our transmission tail shaft is where we need it. And everything looks good and measures out perfect. So this is where it's gonna live. I gotta put the transmission cross member in now in the mount. So that's gonna be some more fabricating. I kind of looked at it a little bit, but it looks like it's gonna have to be modified quite a bit. So that's that. Engine transmission made it back together. Just need to start working on that cross member and the mount underneath. All right, fam, so we're back under the car. You can see I went ahead and just put the cross member in so we could see what we're working with here, where we're building the mount for the transmission. So this is what we're going to use. It's a polyurethane transmission mount. It will mount up right here. So these two holes here and here, it will bolt right on. So as you can see, we're running into a little bit of an issue here with the clearance height of this cross member. So I'm going to bolt this in position and then take some measurements and then make some cuts in here. Basically rebuild this portion of the cross member so it'll actually leave enough clearance here for this mount to go into place. I'm going to move the cross member farther forward, I believe. So let me go ahead and put this all together, mark my cuts, then I'll pull the cross member back out and fab something up real quick. Alright fam, so here you go. It's not the best looking cross member I made, but you can see there the notch I put in it, and I drilled the holes for the engine mount. You can see the bottom here again, not the best looking. I really need to get a better welder. But all in all, for a quick little fabrication, it came out okay. It's going to do the job, and it's going to allow me the notch here needed in order to get that transmission mount to fit in there. So let me grab the mount. It's going to sit just like that, so that'll allow for it to actually fit in the notch there. So that's how it's going to look. We did not put it in yet because I decided to just paint the whole thing black. I got one more coat. It's not a beautiful paint job, but I just wanted to make sure that it was all one color and we didn't get any rust. So let me put on the last coat here, and then we'll put this thing in and call it done. Alright, so there it is. One last look at it as the paint dries before we put it in. So that's the notch we put in it for our transmission mount. It's a little hard to see with the black on black. We turn on a light. But there's a notch we put in it for our transmission mount. And there's the mounting plate there. So I'm gonna let this dry. Once it's dry, we will go ahead and slap it in the Skylark. All right, so I got the mount. I'm gonna put this in first. And we're going to slide it in place. Alright, let's take a quick look here at what we've done. So, I don't know if you guys can see it. It's a little hard to see. But we can see from the bottom here, this is our drop down that we built into our cross member. The mount sits right above it. It's a little hard to see. There's not much room in here now. But just enough clearance to service the pan. And it looks like it's going to be hopefully decent amount of clearance under the car from that transmission pan. So we're going to lower it back down now. Take one quick look before we end the video at where this pan sits when it's on the ground. So I'm going to drop the vehicle back down. But one last look under here. You can see the mount there. And then you can see where we recessed it into this existing cross member. Utilizing the stock cross member to mount our 4L60E. So there you go. Alright, everything's centered back here. We even have our exhaust cut out, or our little loops here for the dual exhaust. Factory had that, so hopefully that'll help clear our pipes going back. But I like what I see here. Everything looks level from here through the front. The oil pan and the cross member in front all appear to be almost level with each other, so I like that. No drastic slopes or anything hanging down any further than the cross member up front. So yeah, it looks good. It's almost dead even with the engine cross member. Alright, so let me lower this thing back down and we'll see how much clearance we have when it's sitting on the ground. Alright fam, so I got it dropped back down onto its tires. So we're on ground level. Let's look at the top first. Everything's held in by the engine transmission mount. So it's officially mounted. Everything's mounted. And now we get to build it out. Add our fuel system, cooling system, exhaust, and wiring. So upcoming videos obviously are going to be those. But for now, this is it for this video. Let's take a look underneath real quick before we go. And I like the ground clearance. I mean, transmission pan sits down quite a bit, but it's not bad. I mean, it's probably right now with no weight in it, besides the engine and transmission, it's probably about 8 inches clearance. And obviously we're not going to ride on these tires, but our tire diameter will be at least that same diameter or more. You know, I got to do something with this stance because the stance is garbage, but we'll get some wheels on here and get it sitting right. Probably drop the front a little bit. But let's take a look now. We got the LS now inside sitting on its own engine mounts. We have the 4L60E on its transmission mount. Also cut out the firewall. All right, let's take a quick look inside. You can see the firewall that we cut up here. We're gonna have to rebuild, but we had to clearance it out for the transmission. You can see down there the modified cross member. This is the view from the top. You can see the mount there. We recessed it into the existing cross member, so that worked out pretty good. We're happy with that. We cleaned out the inside, took out the heater box, just basically gutted it, took out the insulation. So we did a lot on this video, and I appreciate each and every one of you guys that stuck around this long because it helps the algorithm. Also, if you like what you saw today, go ahead and smash that like button. And if you haven't already, go ahead and subscribe to the channel and hit that notification bell to be notified of my next episode. And until next time, stay good, family. Peace.